Hi everyone, it's Friday, February 26, 2016 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Higher Ed Live Special Edition. I'm your host, Erin Supinka, and on today's broadcast we're talking about harnessing the content crazies with a damn solution. A modern content strategy requires institutions to have a library of highly visual and portable pieces of content. Not only do these digital assets need managing and organized, but they need to be produced and distributed to communicators on and off campus at breakneck pace. Oh, that was a tongue twister. I'm joined today by digital asset management pros to learn how to keep your sanity when you face digital assets in a state of organizational disarray and content overload. Special Edition is a part of Higher Ed Live Network, offering viewers direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Live broadcasts allow viewers to share knowledge and participate in discussions around the most important issues in the industry. And today's live viewing experience is powered by Maestro, the premier marketing tech platform for broadcasters. All Higher Ed Live episodes are free and accessible in video archives at higheredlive.com and in podcast form on iTunes. Today's episode is made possible by Widen. Do you need to find, share, publish, and analyze your images, videos, and creative files? As a content technology company, Widen has you covered. Their cloud-based DAM solutions go beyond a media library to connect your visual content with the right people in the right format at the right time. And if you're interested in a DAM and higher ed education topic, see the post about DAM and higher ed we've just tweeted out. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. Are you preparing for a website redesign project? Knowing that your website needs an overhaul isn't usually the problem. Getting started is. Download M. Stoner's helpful 7-step checklist to get you started on the right path for a successful website redesign. And now I'm very excited to introduce my two guests who currently are working with a digital asset management system at their universities. First, I have Corey Chimko, Digital Resource Coordinator at Cornell University, and Miley Thiessen, Digital Asset Manager at UMass Amherst. Thank you so much, guys. I'm excited to pick your brain. At my university, we're actually looking at solutions ourselves, and so this is a great opportunity for me to get some advice from you, but also to share your experiences. So for those of you who are watching along, please don't hesitate to join into the conversation by using the hashtag HigherEdLive, and I'll be doing my best to ask the questions as they come in. And so before we get into the digital asset management part of it, could one of you explain a little bit about what a digital asset is?
Sure. Basically, a digital asset is anything that lives digitally, any type of file. Some that most people will be more familiar with are things like photos, video, documents. But really, most digital asset management systems can ingest just about anything, any type of digital file whatsoever.
Yeah, and so why does that need managing? I think you can kind of see where this is going, especially in the digital communications world that we live in today. But why do we need to organize these assets? Miley, do you want to take a stab at that one real fast?
Sure. Well, the volume of digital assets that we have is growing pretty much just continuously and faster with new technologies. And I feel like most companies are kind of at a tipping point right now, and have been for the last few years, where their shared file storage solutions are filling up, they're running out of room, and it's really hard to find things if you haven't implemented a digital asset management strategy. And that could be as simple as having a standardized folder structure and file naming convention, all the way to something more complex like setting up an enterprise-level DAM at a large company with global offices. So managing them means that you can find them quickly, and you can find what you need fast. Yeah.
Which is super important. So can you tell me a little bit about your guys' DAM solutions and the size and the scope of those? What partners have you worked with on campus to get the DAM solution, and who all utilizes it?
So here at Cornell, we started basically just wanting the DAM system to organize the photography collection, and the photography department here is part of the marketing group, which is basically charged with providing marketing content for the entire university. And it's a really large university. We have about 13 colleges or schools at the university, as well as about the same number of administrative units. And we have content that pertains to all of those people. in our dam system. So we started with photography because that was kind of what we had the best handle on at the time. We implemented the dam based on, we developed a taxonomy, we implemented a naming convention, we had all of our assets in one place, we had to pull a lot of them off CDs, we had to scan a lot of them in from old film, transparency slides, things like that. But once we had that sort of consolidation part done, and then of course you have to set up your metadata and your taxonomy. So we basically have a set of tags where anyone from across the university can search very quickly and easily for any content that pertains specifically to them or their department or their college, basically instantaneously.
Yeah, so at UMass, our project is newer than Corey's. We've had our dam for less than a year. And we started with photography in the University Relations Department, and I'm trying to open it up to also manage our brand assets, so things like logos, word marks, and other graphic elements that are created for our print publications. We'll also manage there. So we just started with the group of 50 in university relations, and next week actually we're about to open it up to about 50 more users from representatives across campus from different schools and colleges and administrative departments.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, that's a very important point that we started small in terms of number of users. It was important for us to get feedback on how well the system was working before we kind of opened it up to a larger audience. And now, we were always going the direction where we wanted to have certain assets available basically to anyone, to the public. So we actually have a public-facing dam now where anyone can go in. You don't have to be a Cornell employee or affiliated with Cornell in any way. You can be an outside media person or even just an interested member of the public. You can log on, check out our assets, download images at low res, but then we manage those higher, more sensitive assets with a permission system. So marketers on campus have access to high-res imagery. They may be able to see larger sections of each shoot that haven't been vetted basically for public consumption. So they can then pull those assets and use them in their marketing publications and projects. And then they can be released later on. So most dams have this ability to provide you with the ability to set different user levels with different functionality for each one. And here at Cornell, we've sort of done it where if you're a marketer, you have one set of permissions, and then if you're a student, you have another. If you're a faculty, you have another. And so some of those people only have the ability to browse and download. Other people can upload and edit metadata, and so on and so forth. So they're really quite granular and robust in terms of being able to manage who can see what and who can do what with what they find. That's very important. And now we're actually progressing to one of our newest projects is trying to tackle video. So I get a lot of questions from people about how they deal with video because it's so large. It's exponentially larger than photography, obviously. And it's difficult to store video even offline, let alone in the cloud at this point. It's also cost prohibitive to do it. So what we've done is we've come up with a system where we're taking screenshots from each one of our videos, and we're using those to construct basically a catalog where we can search through our video that is part of the dam, and then using file names, we can use that basically as a card catalog to go back and find the actual video on our server.
Yeah, we haven't implemented any video assets into our dam solution yet, but the university has a contract with Bright Cove, and so it's just a separate system that they use to manage a lot of the video assets. And I know that our news office has an Avid ISIS server that they use for their editors there, but it's not open to the public. People can't log in and search it, but that's how they manage their video storage. We haven't moved it into our system yet, though, which I would love to do at some point. So I like that approach about the screenshots. That seems very reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, we will sometimes put in like very short kind of web style, marketing style video in there. Anything usually that's over, say, 200 or 300 megabytes is not going to go up in there. It's just too cost prohibitive. You eat your storage up very quickly.
Yeah.
I love the card catalog idea, just kind of little nod to the way where we've come from, and now with all the
Right.
cloud computing, we're back at card catalogs. They might be digitalized, but they're still kind of there. So, kind of, can you guys talk a little bit about what sparked the implementation of a DAM solution? What were you facing at your institutions before you had these systems in place?
For me, I was hired to implement a digital asset management system, and my position is new. There was no digital asset manager in university relations before I came, and they had actually had two other systems before that had both failed, essentially. And I'm a big proponent of advocating for digital asset managers. I really think that digital asset management systems need full-time managers. In order for them to be successful, you need someone who watches over the metadata and makes sure just keeps track that the metadata is being entered consistently, and that you create an ideology around how you enter metadata and sort of the whys and whens, and give full documentation and training to other people who are doing metadata entry. If you don't have those things, your DAM will likely not work, and that can take many forms. If it's just mistakes when the metadata is entered, or having various people responsible for metadata entry that don't have a unified approach, all those things can contribute to unsuccessful searches and sort of users being frustrated, not being able to find things in a system. So the university needed to bring someone in who their job was to research and implement a digital asset management system and then manage it. So that's why I was hired.
Yeah, here at Cornell it was a similar situation, although they did make a stab at having a DAM system before I arrived, but they didn't really have anyone on staff with digital asset management expertise. So we ended up with a non-working DAM, and it was really just a really big mess. And after struggling with it for a while, I kind of came to the conclusion that it would be better just to scrap it and start all over again. So we, that was the point at which I a lot of research and went out to test DAMs and see which ones were best for us and which ones have requirements that we needed. And basically, as I said, we started with photography, so we had all of this material, some of it redundant, some of it not useful, some of it outdated. All of that has to be organized in some fashion. And basically, the reason they wanted this done was to save people time. We get tons of requests for photography and other types of content, and it just wasn't findable other than, it was in people's memories, in people's heads. It requires a lot of institutional knowledge to implement a system like this, and so the trick is, how do you take that knowledge out of somebody's head and put it in a system where people can use it to search for things? And we were, before we had this system, people would physically have to come to our office, sit down, open filing cabinets, pull out negatives, switch on a light box, and sit there and go through them to try to find the photography that they needed, and it could take hours and hours to find even a single photo. Now we're to the point where anyone can log on from the web from anywhere in the world and usually find an image in a couple minutes at the very most. So when I try to talk about, return on investment, we really measure that in time spent looking for digital assets. And I will also put my 2 cents in. I agree 100% with Miley that anyone considering implementing a digital asset management system, you need a full-time digital asset manager, at least at the beginning, if not, I would advocate to have one on staff forever. But if you don't have someone who takes ownership of your system and is controlling the vocabulary and controlling the ingestion, setting up your metadata fields in a standardized and consistent manner, using vocabulary standardization, all of those things are absolutely critical. Something as simple as having two people refer to the same thing in two different ways can result in half of your assets not being found in a search. So it takes an extreme attention to detail, and I don't know if it's just because certain people are drawn to this type of work, but I've found that over the years, certain things that I take for granted in how I work are just kind of missing from other people and the way that they search for things online. So something that might be intuitive for me might not be intuitive for someone else. So you can't kind of assume that everyone is going to categorize or search for things in the same way that you're gonna search for them.
Yeah, and I like that point because one of the things that I look at also is time spent in the dam, and one of the great things about Widen is it hooks up to Google Analytics, and you can see the length of the session. So you can look at the average length of a session and get a rough idea of how long people are spending in the system each time that they log in. And so I'll deduce from that, okay, people are spending 10 minutes looking for things. I want to get that down to 5 minutes or less. I mean, ideally, for simple searches, I'd really like them to be able to find it in 30 seconds to a minute if they're just looking for like 1 or 2 images. But then you also have to account for the time that other people are in there, like admins are in there entering metadata, which takes a little bit longer if you're doing a full record. So that's one way that we calculate ROI, as well as monthly downloads, monthly uploads, and monthly logins. Also, I'm looking more into Google Analytics, but they just added it, and so I'm really excited about sort of diving deeper into that to keep track of how our system's used.
Yeah, I'm a super analytics nerd, and so that right there was just like, I would love to be able to see that, because that, I mean, you could have a system that's working and your regular users or your regular visitors would know how to use it, but you want to make sure that everyone's having this really cohesive, understandable process when they're looking for these digital asset management or assets, because ultimately then you're improving your content across campus. Instead of a department finding this low-res image that they took on their phone from last year's event, they could suddenly have access to a dozen of images from the event that's a college photographer, and they could find it ideally, quickly, and easily, and then produce a beautiful, whether it's a poster, an email, or something that just is much more friendly and pretty.
Yeah.
I love the Google Analytics side of that, being an analytics nerd.
Yeah.
I use the analytics a lot to analyze people's searches as well. Usually what I'm interested in is, what are the top, say, 5 or 10 search terms that somebody might be using over a particular period of time. Not only can you track trends in what people are actually searching for, but that really helps you as the person who's defining your metadata schema find out what terms people are actually using to search. So, maybe when you set your system up, you picked one word, but you're finding that way more people are using a different word. This has actually happened to me because I'm Canadian, and sometimes Americans use slightly different words for the same thing. So I'll be like, oh, that must be like an American term for this thing that I was using as a search term. So I can go in and change it. And it's great. Or if somebody is searching for an event, for example, in a certain way this year, I know that next year I can add that as a tag, and people will be able to find it much more succinctly, much quicker. So although you probably don't want to open your system up to something like social tagging, you can use analytics to sort of get user feedback that can help you to modify your system to be more user-friendly.
That's a great feature. That sounds amazing, because I know how I set up things, and even in my own head, I admit that when I'm building out tags for things, that something as simple as, oh, I think I used event last time versus events, and so even something as small as a plural can completely change the way things are showing up or the way people are searching stuff. So how do you deal with volume, quality, and permission issues? So Corey, you talked a little bit about how you have these different tiers of where more sensitive material, you need specific permissions, but a lot of your stuff is open to the world. How are you guys managing requests to have access to the DAM system? How did you roll out a global reach with your DAM system? So just walk me through kind of that process for both of your institutions.
So basically the idea was to have a system that could function both as basically a content pool for marketers to draw from, but also as kind of a showcase of Cornell itself. Look how beautiful our campus is. Look how great our photographers are. Look at how amazing our content is. So obviously we can't show the public everything that we produce. Essentially, I can talk about it in terms of, let's say that we go out and we do a photo shoot. Now that photo shoot comes back and the photographers may select, say, 5 or 10 images out of that shoot that they think are the best ones. And then I select some as well, based on different criteria. For example, say we have a shot of a professor that we're missing in the dam. We don't have a shot of him. Even though it might not be the best photo, at least it's something. So I might make a selection that way. And then sometimes the people that we're shooting for, if it's a shoot that we're doing for somebody specifically for a project or a publication, they might also have choices. So what ends up in our dam as a selection or an edit of that entire shoot is a combination of the photographers, the dam manager, and the client deciding which images out of that huge shoot are actually good ones to have. So out of, say, 80 images, you might end up with 15 or 20. Now those 15 or 20 selections are the ones that we're going to show to the world. Those are the ones our Photoshop guy is going to work on to optimize. They're the ones that we're going to put in the dam at high res, and so on and so forth. And those are the ones that we essentially consider our vetted assets that are good for public viewing and public consumption. The rest of them are still in the dam, but they're only going to be visible to those people who are basically designers on campus who really want to have access to everything. They want to be able to, if they see a nice shot of a professor and it's a horizontal shot, they want to see if we have a vertical. Or maybe we have one in a 3/4 view instead of facing the camera or something. All of these tiny little things that make a big difference to designers, but probably don't make a big difference to the public who's just looking for a professor. So that's basically how we tackle that. Now, time is an issue. Our photographers are very busy. They don't have a lot of time to edit. So you really kind of have to trust each other in terms of your judgment. So we get together often and talk about the aesthetics of what's going in the dam and what the criteria for selection should be. And then we also have what we call an asset lifecycle policy, where because we're marketing based and not really an archive, we take content out after a certain period of time because we deem it no longer relevant really for marketing purposes. Right now our guideline is 10 years. We're working on trying to reduce that just because, again, there's just a large even with it just being selections, there's still a huge volume of assets in there. And probably our #1 complaint is there's too much in there. We can't, too much to go through, even when you're doing relatively targeted searches. So we continue to struggle with that a little bit. It's one of those things where you just kind of have to go back and forth, and we take our content out after that expiration period and it gets shipped over to the university archive, so then it becomes their problem providing storage and access. But keeping things relevant, keeping things interesting, getting the best assets to the top of your search results all of the time, those are the things that we really try to focus on.
Yeah, so we take a similar approach, although we're not quite as far along. So we started out, and we've been using the dam in university relations. So we have one university photographer. Most of the work in there is his. And so he'll submit his photo shoots, and then designers and the client will review them, and then we'll release only the best assets after. If it's for a specific print publication, we'll only release it after that print publication comes out, unless we're doing a corresponding web article or someone else is in immediate need of that asset. But usually we try to keep the integrity of the photograph for the specific print piece that it was taken for, and then we'll release it for use after that. We're going to be opening the system up, so what I did was create a general collection, which would be a general university collection that's more curated by myself, the photographer, and our director of design. And that is just basically all of the campus shots that we want as our branded photography, that we want people to use to promote the campus. And that helps the relations department just have a little bit more of a consistent look and feel, and gives people access to the higher quality photography that they're looking for. Also, I set up on my dashboard in Widen, I set up a bunch of saved searches. I try to anticipate the needs of the users as much as possible. I know people are looking for pictures of the chapel and other iconic areas on the campus. They want pictures of students walking. They want pictures of students studying. And so I'll break them up into these sort of micro categories that every communicator across our campus community is looking for those kinds of images. And then I'll use the hearting feature where you can pin things to the top. So as Corey just mentioned, you want to make sure that the best assets are floating to the top of your search results. Widen has a great tool for doing that, and you can, just like you would like something on Facebook or Twitter, you can heart it, and then it sort of floats to the top. So if someone searches for fall campus shots, all of the best fall campus shots are going to show up first, and it overwrites whatever search default that they have. And so that helps people find what they're looking for most quickly, because most users are looking for something like that. And I think that will be changing a little bit as we open the system up to more users. But we definitely want it to function as a work in progress tool for our photographers and designers in-house, but also as an archive of our assets. And to address the problem of there being too much content, I mean, we have a lot less in there than you, Corey. I think we have 51,000 right now, and I know you have some crazy.
Well, we just did our 10-year purge, and we went from about 500,000 down to about 300,000. So
wow.
That was a large purge, and it was really good to have that finished. But yeah, the longer we go, and the better our metadata gets, and the better refined our editing process gets, the better the DAM gets. Mm-hmm. So as these older assets drop off, and we continue to edit more and more, you know, the items that stay in the DAM are going to be just the really stellar, amazing ones, and that's really what you want at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I'm still in the process of going back through all of our legacy assets that I uploaded initially and tagging them and making sure that they have full metadata records. And so for me, I don't necessarily want everything that I haven't tagged to be searchable, because I feel like during implementation that can people can perceive that as the DAM not working. And so I actually made a lot of the assets that were taken before 2013 unreleased, so they don't come up in a general search. And then as I complete the metadata records, I'll add them back in. But anything before 2013, I do take more of a curatorial approach about which shoots I'm allowing to be kept there and which ones we won't really need. Like, we don't need headshots of faculty from 2007.
Oh, but those are the ones that they're going to want to use, I guarantee you.
I know.
The younger they look in their photo, that's the one they want to use.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
That's a really good approach. And one of the things that we are playing with the idea of is creating digital contact sheets for each one of our shoots. You can do that in Adobe Bridge with the output module, and basically it's a way of posting everything you shoot without actually putting all those individual assets in there. It's like one contact sheet. Mm-hmm. So we may go to a system where we upload a contact sheet plus our selections, and that's all that goes up in the DAM. And then anybody who wants one just has to select it off the contact sheet, basically, and contact us for it. So you know, these are all ideas that we're throwing around to attempt to cope with this deluge of material that just keeps coming in. And as you say, as technology improves and the size of the output files keeps growing exponentially, it's just going to get worse. You know, people are now moving to 4K video production, where you can actually pull still frames off of the video that are just as good in high resolution as you can get off of a DSLR. So you know, what do you do with 1,000 frames that you pull off a 5-minute video? It's going to be an amazing problem, and people are going to have to, I think, come to a point where you're going to have to make decisions to delete content, and that's going to be a very difficult thing to do. Hopefully DAM provides a way of vetting that content. And when an asset gets to the end of its life cycle, it should be very easy at that point to judge whether or not that's something that you should keep.
First of all, the level of organization and like just what's going on in my head makes me so just happy. It just sounds so organized, and I know it took a lot of time to get there, but it sounds beautiful. I can't even imagine 300,000 assets and being able to look through them at a reasonable pace and find the things that I want. Before I jump into more questions, I just want to remind people to tune in and to send us any questions that you have using the hashtag HigherEdLive. And if you're just joining us, you're turned into a Higher Ed Live special edition made possible by Widen. We do have a question from Twitter, and it's more about you guys and your role and what qualifications for a digital asset manager, like what are the qualifications for that type of position? Can you walk a little bit through, are you super organized? That sounds like something that would be possible. Or what do you look for in a digital asset manager person?
Well, for me, I have a background in fine art photography, and so basically on day one of art school, if you're a photographer, you learn about file naming conventions and how to keep your digital files organized. And then later in life, I also did video editing, which is even more heavily involved with file management, and especially if you work in Final Cut 7 in the older days or in Premiere Pro, those are all link-based systems, and so you have to have your files very well organized in order to be efficient as an editor. For me, those two skills and working on other digital asset management projects in previous jobs qualified me for this position, but it was really through photography and video that I got my skills.
My background is actually in fine art and museum studies. I did my master's degree. I had a concentration basically in museum studies, and a lot of that involves digital asset management as well. But in terms of what you need to be a good digital asset manager, I would say, you know, if you're a type A techie with a little bit of an artist inside of you, this is probably the ultimate job, which kind of describes me pretty well. You do need a pretty exceptional degree of attention to detail, like we're talking like coder level attention to detail. That's very important. Visual memory is another thing. I think that's very important. A lot of times people just come to you and say, remember that picture that looked like this and looked like, and you have to like try to put that into concrete terms and actually input it so that people can find it. Mm-hmm. Writing and editing skills, very important. If you're writing descriptions, you want to be using good grammar. You want to make sure you spell well. You want to make sure you're using punctuation properly, because especially if it's going to be a public-facing DAM, you want it to look professional, obviously. So, you know, I'm constantly looking up people's names to make sure that they've been spelled right in our intake system. I'm constantly making sure I'm spelling the name right and referring to the department correctly and capitalizing the proper nouns, and all of that kind of stuff is, you know, you need an editor sensibility for that. And one thing that I've found that I use way more than I thought I would is basic research skills. A lot of times I was under the impression that I would start and they would have this nice database waiting for me with information about all these assets for me to put in, and I came to realize very quickly that in most cases they know nothing at all about what they're shooting. So they'll go out and they'll come back, and I've even had portrait shoots come back and I say, well, who is this? Oh, I didn't get their name. It's like,
yeah.
You're shooting a portrait of this person, you didn't get their name. So a lot of times, you know, I use obviously the Cornell website to go find mugshots of staff to try to identify people. Mm-hmm. Over time, you get to know, you know, your faculty by sight. You get to know your trustees and upper management by sight, that sort of thing. Obviously, the longer you stay in a particular position, the faster you're going to get at that. And then I guess the other skill you really need is proficiency with the different types of software that you're going to use. So, you know, if you're dealing with imaging and video, you're going to need to know Adobe Premiere and Final Cut and all that kind of stuff. Excel, I use a tremendous amount. When you're exporting and importing metadata, we use these giant spreadsheets which have our metadata fields and columns in there, and it's very easy to work with in Excel. So keeping up with software and that kind of thing, different types of file formats, understanding what the differences are, like between a JPEG and a TIFF and an EPS file and so on and so forth, and why different people might need access to different types or different versions of the same image in different file formats. So all of that makes it, a position where I feel like I'm constantly learning, and that makes it really interesting.
Yeah, I think being a self-starter also, and being a little tenacious about the system, especially when you're first implementing a DAM, some people are very resistant to change. And so you have to be more of an advocate for the system than I had expected. Definitely also being a good teacher. You want to be able to provide training effectively for the users in your system, and to be accessible, have a friendly personality, try to make the trainings fun so that people really want to engage and use the tool. It can really help them a lot, but sometimes people do need to be convinced of that.
Yeah, you must have read my mind, because that was my next question, was what kind of courses or teaching opportunities do you provide people who are interested, or maybe a little kind of not 100% sold on the idea of a DAM solution? So you offer like sessions regularly, or do you go around and kind of do an intro to each department as you introduce them to the DAM solution?
So for me, I think, well, I held group trainings at first, and so I would just, have a projector and go over the DAM, but I'm changing my approach a little bit for this next round of users to be in a computer lab. I think that it will be a lot more effective to have people actually in the system using it, that can ask questions, and to have exercises that they're going to go through while I'm there. And I'm also going to be recording that training session and then making it available in the DAM, which I didn't do in my first round of training, and that was a learning experience for me. So I have made some custom videos. Also, I work in a building that's off campus, and so it's more challenging to get over there, and the campus is so big that making it in person to see everyone is challenging. I do try to go in person as much as possible. I think that that's really important, to have a face to the name and to meet people and just make sure that they know that you're accessible as someone to help. But Wyden also has great resources online for how to do almost anything, and part of their service is tech support, which includes, how do I search for X? People can pretty much chat them and ask for anything, and that's one of the things that I really like about the company. Their customer service is off the charts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I approached it basically the same way. I mean, when we did our initial implementation, I really focused on education for our marketing group specifically, and then branched that out to the other marketers across campus. It's a real challenge in an environment, as you say, this large, not just physically getting out to see people, but in terms of turnover. Every few weeks there's a new staff member coming into some marketing department somewhere on campus. So reaching out when you see a new registrant in the system, saying, hey, you're more than welcome to figure things out on your own, but if you need extra help, I'm certainly here and available. One thing that we do is there are a lot of things that our department and division does that aren't necessarily DAM related, but are related to the DAM. So like if somebody needs to know how do I hire a photographer, for example. So we have a set of links on our dashboard in the Wyden system that basically links to all of our other divisional resources from within the DAM itself, because a lot of time that resource is kind of like their first entrance into our division or our department. And they may say, oh, well, looking for photos is great, but what do I do if I need to start a project? What do I do if I need a video? What do I do if I need someone to come out and take a portrait of me? So all of those things are sort of included on our dam dashboard so that people can interface with us a lot better that way. And as far as ongoing training, every time that there are Widen releases small and large upgrades at various times during the year, and anytime there's a new feature on the dam, I try to take that opportunity to reach out to the user base and say, hey, I'm going to be doing a training on this new feature, and if you want to attend, you're more than welcome to ask other questions when that's over as well. I do host optional bi-monthly trainings. They're basically opt-in. I have like a mailing list, and if people want to come to our conference room and hang out for a lunch hour and ask questions about the dam, that's something I do as well. But I would say it's something that I struggle with. I mean, thank God for Widen's videos, training resources, their Widen University, their live chat. All of that helps tremendously and kind of saves me from having to play that support role. But there are a lot of things that are not dam or Widen related, but instead are Cornell related, that people have questions about that Widen can't educate them on. So that's where I come in, and I try to do as good as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I love that utilization of the dashboard to push out resources that those people are potentially going to be interested in or already interested in. If they're coming to look for a headshot of a professor, maybe they need to schedule a headshot for the professor because it doesn't exist, or it's a new professor or something. I love that resource there because it really is taking advantage of that space. We touched on this a little bit earlier with Corey mentioning that they kind of move stuff out of the dam, but archive solutions, are they both separate for you, Corey? Obviously they are. And what does that process look like, migrating from this dam solution into the archive process for the university?
Well, for us specifically, it requires having a working relationship with the library and the archives which reside in the library. We kind of have a yearly ritual where I export the assets from the dam that we're going to be removing, make sure all of that metadata is getting embedded in those files on export. We send our intake lists from our intake system along with the assets so that they have something to refer to that's maybe offline if they're not able to put everything online right away, that sort of thing. So we work with them to provide them the resources that they need to ingest that content in a good way and to be able to locate it both on and offline. And then other than that, we go through every year, that year that expires, we go through that content, and the vast majority of it's going to come out. I'd say 99% of that's going to come out of our dam. Every once in a while, we will save an iconic shot that's older than that, just because it's something that people are going to be looking for forever. I mean, for example, we have photos of Carl Sagan at Cornell because he was a professor here, and so people are always looking for photos of Carl Sagan. So we have a few of those on our dam, even though they're from the 80s and 90s. We do have a few that's going all the way back to the 60s. Usually Nobel Prize winners or extremely famous professors or people that have visited the campus. So we do maintain a very small collection of historical photos that are asked for a lot of the time, but other than that, we ship them off. But it's very important to maintain that metadata because a lot of times you'll be entering metadata in the system as opposed to embedding it before you upload it. But Widen has a great feature where when you export your files, it takes the metadata that you've entered in the system with it. So that's an amazing feature for archival purposes. And then you can store that material offline. You can send it to your archives. You can put it in something like Google or the Glacier system, which is so-called deep storage, where it's a lot cheaper to store things, but it takes a lot longer to retrieve them. There are a number of ways that you can approach that, but the key thing is just to make sure that you don't lose your content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we take a really similar approach. At first, when I was first implementing the dam, I was thinking, a 5-year asset lifecycle would be great because that way, we'd save money and the system wouldn't be overwhelmed with too many assets, making it harder to find things. But since we only have one university photographer, and now we may get more people uploading to the dam, so I might be able to change this, but we just didn't have enough from the last 5 years. There were still older assets that were extremely useful. And one of my interview questions actually when I started at UMass was, what makes a digital asset old? And I thought that was a really interesting question. And my answer was when it stops becoming useful. And so what you said, Corey, is a perfect example, and we're doing a similar thing. So if I get a request for an archival image that I know is stored in the library, sometimes I'll upload it to the dam because I personally get a request for it all the time, and it might be faster to go through the digital asset management system to retrieve it than it would be to go through the library, especially for internal users in university relations who don't need the same kind of clearances as general university users or the general public. So I also worked closely with our special collections and university archives department, and I tried to design our metadata schema so that it was the most compatible with their MODS metadata standard, and we're testing crosswalking right now. So basically what that means is that you use the same kinds of naming conventions that the library does so that you can map fields from one to another. And increase the interpretability over time. In my persons shown in image metadata field, for instance, I'm in the process of going through and looking up all those names on the Library of Congress name site and trying to put them in that format because I know that's what the library uses. And since it's a relatively short list that we made just for VIPs and most important people at the university, it's a manageable goal, or it's an attainable goal. And so taking into consideration principles of library science, communicating with the librarians, being willing to learn more about library science if you don't have that background and being interested, I think is really important. Just to make sure that you have enough information to meet your communications goals so that your users can find things quickly, but also that you have a historical record, especially at a university or if you're at a cultural heritage institution, you want to have a complete historical record and enough information that would give someone context to know what was happening there. I mean, some people manage digital asset management systems, and they might have like only 4 or 5 fields that they fill out that allows them to find the things that they need, but it doesn't always provide enough historical context for it to be complete for an archive. So you have to find the balance.
I love your definition of when it's old. I think that's extremely valuable as the physical time that an asset's been in the system. Corey, your example of a professor that taught at Cornell and people always looking for an image of that's huge. I mean, I can think of several that we would want to always have available for people to come and look because there's always a story written about them in their time at my university. So we're getting close to the end of our time today, and Miley, we were talking before we got on air a little bit about your implementation, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of time to chat quickly about that.
Sure. So because UMass Amherst is a public institution, we had to go up to bid for purchasing a digital asset management system, which means that you contact, 3 or more digital asset management vendors, and they send you a quote that's pages long about why you should choose their system, and then they bid, and then you as the digital asset manager can make an argument for which system to go with. The preference is to go with the lowest bidder, but sometimes you can make an argument if you feel your needs are going to be best met by one of the other options. That being said, it was a long process. Our RFP process took about 6 months, and I was really antsy as someone who just started and was really excited about the project to start entering metadata right away. So I just wanted to talk about some of the things that you can do to prep while you're waiting for purchasing a system to go through or while you're still doing research on which system you want. Basically just making lists, and at a university, There's going to be a lot of that information on your website. Work with IT and talk to the people that run the CMS that have set up a lot of the lists. That will really help you get things down like buildings, learn all the acronyms at your institution by heart and make those a part of the naming convention so that people can search in shorthand. That's a really helpful tool. And then also finding out if the digital asset management system that you're going to be using can map metadata. And what that means is that you can embed metadata into IPTC fields in Bridge or Lightroom. And then you can tell certain digital asset management systems which fields in the DAM to pull from. So you can say, if the person's shown an image, IPTC metadata field is filled out, map to person's shown an image in the catalog. And so I tested those mappings extensively before in my sandbox solutions for a few different dams, and Widens was the best. So that was one of the reasons that I really liked it, is that it does have that functionality on the front end, so when you're loading things in, and on the when you're exporting it out, as Corey mentioned earlier. I used a plugin called Search, Replace, and Transfer for Lightroom that helped a lot. Some of the XMP fields worked better than others, and with the Search, Replace, and Transfer, I could pretty much move the metadata around from any field of my choosing very easily and do it on mass amounts of files at a time, maybe like 15 to 20,000 files at a time. So if I found that one technical glitch didn't work, I could easily switch it over and process through all the files that I was going to upload. So I just wanted to plug that feature for metadata preparation before you actually do an initial upload to any digital asset management system. If they do have a mapping feature available, take advantage of it. You can get started really quickly. The names do have to match whatever categories you set up in the system. So, for instance, if I was looking for myself, it'd be Thiessen Miley K, and it would need to be exactly that same way in the catalog as it was in my metadata field for it to map correctly. And that,
yeah, absolutely critical. We also map our IPTC fields in Widen, and dealing with metadata standards and how they're applied is a bit of a it's a rabbit hole when you go down it. There's a lot of different standards, and there's compatibilities and incompatibilities between different ones, but Widen's really good at helping you understand those distinctions and helping you decide where you want to put the corresponding fields in Bridge that are going to correspond to what your DAM fields are. And in fact, you can actually, I've been delving into XMP itself, and you can actually create your own metadata templates now in Bridge. It involves a little bit of XML but coding, but it's something that would be very beneficial for us if we could actually just have what was displayed in Bridge be exactly what we have in our DAM, which would, so that you didn't have to try to remember which ones correspond to which ones. But you know, that's a little more advanced. But yeah, and obviously embedding your metadata before you ingest into the DAM has the added bonus of the fact that that metadata lives with that asset forever. So if you have an overzealous manager or photographer who's going into your storage and pulling a file as opposed to pulling it from the DAM, it's still going to have that metadata in it, which is critical for tracking that back later on if you need to modify the image or something.
Mm-hmm. Or a use case for that we've discovered a number of times is if we're going to print something for a billboard or a large banner and we need to go back to the raw file, then having the searchable metadata is invaluable. And just if you choose to share it in another way or a catalog.
Or people change the file names on you.
Mm-hmm.
They do that all the time. We use a little Bridge plugin that actually embeds the original file name into the IPTC title field, and it will stay there even if somebody goes and like manually renames a file. So if they send you a link to the file on the web, or they send it back to you and it has a different name, you can just open it up in any application, go to file info, and you can retrieve your original file name, which is very, very useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the search and replace search, replace, and transfer
Yeah.
Lightning plugin will do the same thing.
Cool.
Well, that brings us to the end of our show today. Any last pro tips or best practices that we can toss out? Because I know that I'm inspired to do a lot more research into DAM solutions, and I'm sure there are some other viewers that are tuned in just thinking, okay, this is something we definitely need to move forward with. What are some quick takeaways you can offer up to someone that's just starting the process?
For me, understanding that strong project management and strong digital asset management go hand in hand. So most communications departments will have some kind of project management system. Having really solid workflows that match your project management workflow with your digital asset management workflow will make things feel more intuitive to people. So I always like to communicate a lot with the project manager and how people have dealt with files up until the point of implementation. You can find out a lot about what their frustrations are and what will feel intuitive from the way that they've been interacting with files up until this point.
Yeah, I agree. We have the same issue here where not everybody is using the same naming conventions and so on and so forth. And as I move outside of photography and into video and into the design group and so forth and tackle their assets, the same issues keep cropping up over and over again as people just they kind of just don't do it right the first time. They'll name something with a name that comes to their mind right at that particular moment, or a name that actually has nothing to do with the content of that asset. Like they'll say, oh, it's for such and such a project, or they'll put in the publication name, or they'll put in some other irrelevant detail that has nothing to do with what that actual file is. So just kind of educating people on how to name things properly and which criteria to use to name things and how to be consistent in your naming. Those little details can really, really help people a lot in terms of organization. And in terms of DAM, I would say the same thing. I've seen DAM approaches where their approach was just to kind of ingest everything that they had and then go back and clean it up later. And that tends to be a much more frustrating experience for your users because there's no telling what is in those metadata fields and who put it there and when and how much of it is accurate or even applicable. And it's, in my opinion, it's much, much easier to clean all of that stuff out and tag things properly before you ingest them. That way you don't have that frustration on the part of your users and you don't create this idea that, oh, if I find what I'm looking for in the DAM, it's just luck. No, every time somebody logs into your DAM, they should be able to find what they're looking for with a minimum of extra stuff. So definitely do it right before you ingest. People will be much happier with their experience if you take a little bit of extra time and make sure that things are concise and accurate before they actually have access to that content.
Solid advice all around. Well, that brings us to the end of our show, and I just wanted to say thanks as always to our program sponsors, Wyden and M. Stoner. Don't forget Wyden is the leader in cloud-based DAM, proven at every level, and if you're looking for solutions, get in touch at wyden.com. And a huge thank you for my guests, Corey and Miley, joining me today and sharing your expertise and your experience with the DAM solutions and getting started and getting your university on board. It's been great talking with you. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.